All right, Mike, we're back and we are going to take on Ryan Holiday's last book in the Stoic Virtue series today. But before we do that, we should talk about some follow up items. Now, I had some follow up items in here that were for the old section, and you took them out of here. And I don't know if you did that on purpose or not, but I still want to talk about one of them.
I did, but I'm sorry. I didn't know you actually meant to revisit those.
I meant to keep those in there, but that's okay. I just want to, and 90% of the reason why I wanted to keep them in there is because I want credit for them. So I did download Justin's resources.
Okay.
So check, yay! I did look into, we did the accountability thing primarily because you did it at the very end of the show last time. So thank you very much for doing that. I'm doing a terrible job staying accountable, but if you want to know more about that, feel free to go to the pro show. We talk about why I'm doing a terrible job or why I might be doing a terrible job and how to overcome that. Mike basically coached me for the last 15 minutes. If you all don't know my theme for pro shows, my theme is to get Mike to coach me live on this episode. So I just ask him questions in ways that turn into a coaching session. But now let's go ahead and get to today's. So my first follow-up item was make an accessible reference guide of the reference items that were in the back of Made to Stick. So what I did is I pulled those out of there, and then I told Gemini to format that and make it pretty and turn it into something that I could throw into my Obsidian vault. And it did a great job, and I feel really good about it. And now it's there for when I want to know and say, what exactly did that made to stick book say? I can quickly find it in Obsidian, and there you go. Fantastic. So I'm feeling good about this one. I'm liking it. And what's yours? So what's your first follow-up item or your only follow-up item? We didn't have very many follow-up items.
Yeah. This is actually not something that you'll be able to hold me accountable to for quite a while because it has to do with the book that I'm writing. But I want to have that easy reference guide for the personal retreat book that I'm writing, just like Made to Stick at the end of my book. So I haven't even started this yet, but I am working on the writing, as you alluded to. We've got a fancy Google sheet which charts all the words that people have written.
Yep.
And I'm not making as much progress on that as I would like either. I need to get serious about this.
Okay, just so everybody knows, not making much progress is light years ahead of the amount of progress Cory's making. So Mike is doing a great job, everybody. I'm just going to tell you that he's doing a great job.
Not if I'm going to get it done by the end of November.
Yeah,
I gotta pick up the pace.
Valid. Yeah, that's valid. I get that. One more item of follow up is. Mike, I have some disappointing news. I have some sad news that I'm going to break for you right now.
I think I know what this is.
I don't think I can go to sponsor games. I really don't. I looked at when the thing was, and like you actually somewhat made this easier for me because at some point I get a text that basically says I'm in, like done. You know, Mike sends me the message. It's like I would miss like 3 or 4 days of class right before spring break. And I just can't do that. Like if it was
move your spring break,
I can't do that either. But if it was like if it was school related, I could do it. But because it's not school related at all, it's just a completely personal thing. I just don't feel right doing it. So the timing of things. I'm sorry, but I'm excited to hear what you're gonna do and how you're gonna grow from it and how amazing it's gonna make the rest of your life. And then I'm gonna be sad for months.
It will be fun. Yeah. So I did buy the ticket. I got the flights. Don't have the hotel yet, but I will be at sponsor games. So yeah, if you want to come land sponsorship deals with me, you should join.
You should join Mike in San Antonio in March of next year. Okay.
Yep.
All right, cool.
On the Riverwalk. It'll be great.
Are you ready to get into our book for today?
As ready as I will be.
Okay. All right. That's a little bit of foreshadowing there, everybody. So this is Wisdom Takes Work. Learn, Apply, Repeat. This is the 4th book in Ryan Holiday's Stoic Virtue series. And as you can imagine from the title, it is about wisdom. And it is in very, very fitting form to the rest of his books. There is an introduction to the book. There are 3 parts to the book. There's an afterword or an epilogue, or I forget what he calls it in this book. But and then there are a bunch of what I'm going to call tiny little chapters. and they're all the things that he wants to hit in the big themes of his part 1, part 2, and part 3. So without further ado, I think we get into it, unless you have something else that you want to talk about before the introduction.
Just that, as you mentioned, this is the last one in the Stoic Virtue series. There are 4 Stoic virtues,
Yeah.
and I couldn't recall them off the top of my head. I think that's okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at them. So the only reason I know them is I'm looking at them: courage, discipline, justice, and wisdom.
Okay, yeah. So I would say at the beginning of this that even though they are Stoic virtues, this is not a Stoicism textbook per se. Like, there definitely is a Stoic vibe to it, and Ryan Holiday has, I think, firmly established himself as the Stoic guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But I don't consider myself a Stoic. I'm not a huge fan of Stoicism, not a huge fan of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I still get a lot out of these types of books. So I do think, even if you are not a Stoic, that doesn't mean that you are removed from the ideal audience for this.
Yeah. It's interesting to me that, like, I mean, I don't even think about it as a Stoic series. I think more about it as wisdom or courage or justice or discipline. So I would go into it that way. It's not a short book. So this book's 400 pages, but at the same time, it also breaks down into those little chapters. So it doesn't, I don't know, I guess it doesn't feel like a 400-page wall-to-wall text type of a book. So just kind of note that going into it.
Yeah, it does not. It reads much closer to, I would say, a normal 260-ish page book.
Yeah,
part of that, I think, is the pages are formatted. Like, the whole book is kind of short and squatty. It looks kind of weird. And so there's not as many words on the page. And then because the chapters are so short, frequently they end in the middle of a page. And so you buy back some pages that way.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the introduction. So the first thing Holiday's going to do is he's going to kind of remind us what the 4 virtues are. He's going to then introduce the idea that this book is all about the wisdom, and he makes a statement in here: the book aims to explain the method of some of the wisest people to ever live. And the reason why I bring that up is because that's what he'll do the entire book. Is he will basically pick a wise person, talk about them. Pick a wise person, talk about them. Pick a wise person, talk about them. And then kind of at the end of each section, when he wants to talk about that thing that he deems wise, in whatever form it is, he's going to then do a wrap up or do like a summary of those things. So very story heavy in terms of the book. He's going to tell us a story and then he's going to talk about it. He's going to tell us a story and then he's going to talk about it.
Yep. And it's kind of the same format and the same playbook that he's been following for the other books in this series. But this one feels a little bit thicker. So maybe this is the longest one. I didn't compare the page counts, but... Yeah.
Okay, anything else with the introduction? I mean, he's really just telling us that wisdom is the mother of all virtues, that basically all of the other virtues rely on wisdom. It can't be delegated to somebody else. You have to earn it. That's where the wisdom takes work part comes from. We can get wiser, but never wise is an interesting way to frame that. And then, I mean, he's really just giving us an overview of the idea of what he considers wisdom to be, or what people consider wisdom to be. So...
Yeah, I think that's fine. I guess the other thing I'll share at the beginning of this is that in terms of the Stoic virtues, this one is, I think, the most interesting to me. I don't think I've said that about the other books, but maybe I have. I don't know. Like, courage is appealing, but the whole idea of what actually is wisdom and how do you apply it, I feel like that is the one that is kind of custom fit for me to like the most.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the reason why we do this podcast, right? Is we read these books. We don't just read them to read them. We talk about the ideas, figure out what we're going to apply from them. That is essentially our version of trying to build this wisdom.
Yep. I would agree. Okay, then let's move into part 1. Now, this episode is going to seem maybe a little bit different than other ones because Each of the three parts is actually quite long. So I didn't count them, but Mike, you might know more off the top of your head. I mean, there's probably 15 subsections within each one of these parts. I mean, like there's a decent number of pages in every one of the parts. So the part one, the first part is called the agoge, or your training ground. And it's going to come from either Greek or, some ancient language, Latin, I would assume. I don't know my languages very well, so I assume it's Latin. But he's basically talking about your training ground. So in this, he's going to unpack like a bunch of different concepts. So I'll read some of them. I won't read all of them because that would be boring. But a most unusual education, talk to the dead, be curious, ask the question, focus, 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 learn to listen. So like he's going to say this, and basically he's getting into the idea of we need to... I guess the way I'll say it is like wisdom just doesn't come from nowhere. Like we have to have like a background in wisdom. So that's where the training ground comes from. Just so you can get a structure of the book as we unpack the entire book. The next one is going to be called the Sirens, the perilous rocks you must beware. And the next one is called the apathesis, or touching the divine. So basically it's like train yourself, then be careful of these things, then basically extend this idea of wisdom, or try to achieve actual wisdom. Maybe not. We'll talk about that when we get there. But I think the best way to do this, Mike, is to just kind of look at it and say, hey, what do we want to talk about in here? What stood out to you? What makes sense as you went through the training ground portion of the book?
Sure. Well, one that I really liked was Talk to the Dead, because this is about books. So he mentions that books are conversations with the dead. He says that we all have time to read. And on page 26, there's a quote that says, there are many paths to wisdom, but nearly every one of them runs through books. And I have not heard Ryan Holiday talk about this topic, but I feel confident in saying that he would advocate for physical books.
Would you think that? That seems very true to you. I think he would advocate for reading, not necessarily physical books.
Well, he has a bookstore where he sells physical books.
Oh my gosh.
And the way that he writes his books is with analog note cards.
I know. It's his book writing style is wild. I think you're absolutely right. He would 100% say physical all the way through, because he picked up what's his name? His mentor. Goodness gracious.
Oh, Robert Greene?
Yeah, he picked up Robert Greene's note-taking and index card thing, and because he talks about at the end of the book about how he picked that up. So yes, you're right. Even though you and Ryan Holiday are wrong, yes, you're right.
I don't know that we are, but that's okay. He asks the question in this chapter, can you think of any truly wise person who doesn't read?
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty interesting question.
Well, and this ties back into our book on Charlie Munger, where it talked about how, voracious of a reader Charlie Munger was. And I think about this too, is like the idea of just everybody that you know is that you consider wise, I would say is a very strong reader. They're either a strong reader or they've got 60 years of experience in the thing that they're wise in. It's one of those two things.
Well, it's probably both of those things. I was thinking about that, because can I think of any truly wise person who doesn't read? And I really couldn't. And I was trying to think of a scenario where that would fail to be true. And because on the surface, like initially I was kind of thinking there's got to be someone somewhere that I would consider, they're wise, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to hit on from this, by the way, the books are conversations with the dead idea. This is really interesting to me, because I have long held the belief that books are like the best investment that you can make. For $20, you can get the best ideas from some of the most brilliant minds that have ever walked the earth, which is why when someone recommends a book, I open up the Amazon app and I buy it right on the spot, because even if that just sits on my bookshelf for years until I actually go pick it up to read it, it's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, we spend so much more on pumpkin spice lattes, and
Uh-huh.
stuff that makes no real difference in our lives. And when you think about what books actually have the potential to give you, it's kind of crazy that they are so cheap.
Yeah.
Like these should be probably hundreds of dollars if they were gonna, even the bad ones, if they were going to accurately reflect the value that they can provide to somebody's life. And most people can't be troubled to go get a library card and get them for free. Like,
And this is why I am so for libraries, and I'm so for like access to information and knowledge in that way, even to the point where, and again, Mike, you're gonna roll your eyes at me probably when I say this, but it's like the idea of like digitizing books and having a record of those things, that way they stay around long term. I think this is so valuable for us because there's so much information and so much knowledge contained. And one of the points I think Holiday makes at different places in here is the fact that, like, if you want the wisdom out of those books, you can't just matrix style plug in and download the information. You have to work through it. And as Mike kind of said, and you all know this from the fact that we do the show, this is the value of what we do here, right? Like, yes, we're making a product and hopefully you're benefiting from it and you're gaining something from it. But like us working through these books and then talking about them and like hashing these ideas out, that work that we put into that hopefully is slowly making us wiser as we think about life and as we think about how to apply it to life. So I couldn't agree more that I think like this Conversations with the Dead, I like that idea. I like the idea of books are like you said, books are cheap. They're a relatively cheap way to get access to a lot of different ideas and cool ideas. And I just think I think the work is a benefit. You know, when I think about it compared to social media, the work is a benefit because social media takes no work. I just turn it on and the algorithm just pops stuff in front of my face all the time. This actually makes me go find the book. It makes me get the book. It makes me read the book. You know, I think that's a valuable thing in this situation.
so on that topic, not to spend too much time on this first one here, but I just published a newsletter / blog post about being a river, not a reservoir. And I was kind of responding to a newsletter that Ali Abdaal had shared a week or two ago as we record this about what he calls the creation to consumption ratio.
Okay.
So going back to the pro show about being a professional creator versus a side hustle creator.
Yeah, yep.
He actually advocates for as much time creating something of your own as time that you spend consuming things that other people have made. And he kind of advocates for the 1-to-1 ratio there. And I kind of think that's impossible.
Yeah.
So as I was thinking about it, you know, my take on it is you don't worry about the ratio. You just have to have an output from all these ideas and things that you collect and consume. But I made the point as I was putting together that newsletter that the argument could probably be made that you should consume way more than you create if you have high quality sources. And I think I called out books specifically, but I'm guessing that Ali is not. I know he reads. He's got a whole book club section on his YouTube channel, but I think just the way that is phrased, it kind of assumes that you're not gonna wrestle through a 360-page book like we just did before sitting down to record an hour-and-a-half podcast on it. Like those two don't match up 1-to-1. So I think the more important thing is not how much am I consuming, but really like what are you consuming? What is in your information diet? That's another topic in one of these sections, but not the one that we're in. So.
Yeah. Are you okay if I move us to a couple different ones that lump together?
Yep.
All right. So
go for it.
Some of the ones that stood out here for this one is find your classroom, find your teacher, become an apprentice. So not surprising that I would call out those three. I want to talk about them as a package because I think they are a package. And what I really like is his approach to being more open to classroom. You know, he calls out things like the military, an internship, an apprenticeship, starting a company, doing a thing, you know, like that there are these ideas that can be your classroom. I think traditional classrooms are good, and I think they are useful And I think that it's going to be very hard to become a wise person without at some point experiencing a traditional classroom. Like, I just think that's the case. I also think that it's going to be hard to become a wise person without experiencing a non-traditional classroom. So I think both of these things are very, very true. Like, I think about some of the ways I've learned the most isn't in a classroom where there's been a lecturer or a teacher like actually talking to me. It's been working with somebody and watching what they do and trying to figure out why did they think that way and how did they do that. And this rolls us right into that thing about like find your teacher. And I love what he says here basically is like, avoid bad teachers. And I think this is so true. And like, this is where, part of the educational system, I get kind of frustrated with it because I think about the educational system a lot is like, if your student, whether it be your child or your nephew or whatever it might be, if they get in with a bad teacher and you can't figure out a way to get them out of that bad teacher, that can ruin like the whole year for them. If they're in a traditional educational environment, that can ruin like the whole year. And not only the psychological impact it has, so it's a whole year of learning plus a psychological impact. Now, by no means am I saying don't have grit and you can't like help your kid learn to deal with a struggling situation, or that's the wrong way to put it, but help them deal with a difficult situation. But what I say is like, if you're in a situation where like somebody's clearly, they're just a bad teacher, it's okay. It's just like a bad book. Like we've talked about this on the show in the past. If there's a bad book, it's okay to put it down and just not finish it and be like, I don't like this book. This book is bad. I'm going to put this down. The same thing I think is true with teacher. We did an entire episode on apprenticeship, and we read an entire book about apprenticeship. So I don't want to go too hard into the apprenticeship, but Mike, I think the more and more I'm doing education, the more and more I'm thinking about learning, the more of a fan I'm becoming for apprenticeships. And again, I don't think that you get rid of the traditional classroom, but I think if you combined classroom environment with an apprenticeship in the right way and at the right ratios, man, what an educational opportunity. We're strong on internships here, and I've always been a fan of like co-ops and those type of things. I just think there's a huge value in apprenticeship. So I really like the way he framed and he packaged these three things. And I also appreciate the way he put them in the order that he put them in: classroom, teacher, apprenticeship, and kind of how he blended all that together. I found those to be really valuable for me.
Yeah. So my oldest is 18 and we're looking at schools and things like that. So we actually went and toured the technical college the other day and learned about a lot of those programs. I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on stuff like that, because those seem pretty interesting. They obviously have the classroom element where you're learning what to do, but then you actually go do it. Like if you want to get into, I forget the name of the program, but there's literally a program where you spend a whole year building the house. If you want to learn how to build the house, they'll actually walk you through it. And you get to apply all the learning. If you want to get into woodworking, they've got a $10 million lab with all this crazy equipment in it where you can actually do this stuff. And it just seemed like a really neat approach to at least the things that you would learn with the trades. Getting some experience before you would have to go start at the bottom if you want to become a plumber or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's an immense opportunity there, right? And if you look at the nation right now, there's a lot of skilled labor holes that we have right now. So I don't know them. I haven't kept up with the data very recently. Like I haven't gone and looked at it in the last week or two or whatever it is. But I can tell you that like my brother is always looking for welders. He's always looking for pipe fitters. He's always looking for people who are in the skilled labor. Electricians, I know there was a period out here in Denver where fiber optic installers, I mean, you could not find enough of fiber optic installers. So I'm a huge fan of those things. I think what you have to encourage the student to think about, and what the parents have to like help them think through, is not necessarily the next 5 or 10 years, but think through like 25 years from now. It's like in 25 years, what do you think about like still going out and managing job sites and, like welding and like getting into all those crazy positions and like being an electrician, versus are you setting yourself up to where as you naturally like get older, right, and you don't want to do those manual labor type jobs anymore, have you set yourself up in a way that it allows you to then manage the people that are doing that work, or apprentice the people that are doing that work and mentor the people that are doing
Sure.
that work. And I think there's a both sides of that conversation, because I think that there are certain individuals where those jobs fit much better with them, especially at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. Like, I mean, just
Yep.
without a doubt, like that's what they need to be doing right now. Just like I think there are certain people who come out and they're like, I need to go to the military. Like, that is the education I need right now. It is not a formal education. It is the military. Like, that's the education I need. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And then my question is, okay, what do you do after that? Like, what happens after that? Or are you okay with doing that thing forever, like for the rest of your career? And if you can answer those honestly, I think, that's a completely okay thing. I also find, I have to say this because I'm a university faculty member, right? Like, I also think there's a whole nother set of the world that when you graduate high school, going into undergrad, like going into traditional 4-year undergrad program, is the absolute right thing for them to do. That's exactly what they need to do. And they know why they need to do it. And then there's a whole group of people that have no clue what they want to do, and they're in the murky middle, and they come out and they say, well, what do I need? I need a couple years to figure stuff out. And
Yep.
that could look like gap years. That could look like actually enrolling in a university and using the university to explore those opportunities. It could look like apprenticing under somebody, getting mentored. So there's my overly long-winded answer of, I think they're all viable options, and the hard work is figuring out which one's best for you.
Sure. One other thing I wanted to talk about in this section, there's actually a little chapter called "Create a Second Brain," which I gotta admit, when I read that title, I was like, "Huh," because I knew that he he creates his books on the analog note cards, as he mentioned, the system he picked up from Robert Greene. So that was curious that was here. Really, what this is an admonition to keep a commonplace book.
Yep, exactly. I was going to say that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So he mentions engage in the practice of capturing information and recording it so it can be drawn on later. And then later on, I think it was the acquire experience section. He talked about Da Vinci, who was methodical about processing and recording information he came across inside of his commonplace books. He talks a lot about Da Vinci, and his notebooks and things like that actually come up later in a different section. But there's one other quote from this Create a Second Brain section that I think is absolutely great advice. Study all systems, but make your own, one you'll actually use. Right? So this is essentially why I have taken the approach with Practical PKM that I have. And I've struggled a little bit with Life HQ because I don't want it to be a done for you system that you just start using and then you never think about it again. Turns out that's what people say they want, but I feel like the most successful version of any PKM system is one where you take the foundation and then you apply your own tweaks to it.
Yeah.
Which is why I have written over 60,000 words in documentation for Life HQ. So I literally have a whole book written already just inside of Life HQ with all the how-tos and things. But regardless of whether you use Life HQ or not, I just want to call out that this is great advice about not just copying somebody else's system. I kind of recoil a little bit when people are like, oh, I use Para, or I use, whatever sort of organizational structure, because those systems are kind of built to force your brain down predetermined paths. And if those paths work for you, great, but they're probably not a perfect match. And so you do have to figure out, what is the path of least resistance for how you work, and then build the structure to support the way that you work. And just using a pre-built thing out of the box, I feel like is just not the right way to do it. But I've also not heard anybody describe why, or not why, but really the what I consider to be the correct approach so succinctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he does a good job here. I also want to say that I don't think your Life HQ is meant to do that. I don't think you ever sell it like that. You sell it as like what I see it as a get over the hurdle, right? Like, so, okay, here's a preceded thing to get over the hurdle, and then you got to tweak it and you got to make it your own. Like, that's the way I think you've done there. So I'll stop there. But I agree. Like, I think you have to have some sort of a system, or wisdom will take longer to develop. Because I think if you don't have some sort of a system, a commonplace book, a digital commonplace book, some sort of, Life HQ type of a thing, you're just going to lose too much because of especially how fast information hits us these days, and how much information hits us, and how busy we run our lives. Like, we all run our lives entirely too busy, I think. But what are you going to do? Like, that's just kind of how life is right now, unless you make an active choice to not do that. Okay,
Yeah,
I have
agreed.
one more out of here that I want to talk about, and then we can move from my perspective. The join a scene section, the join a scene chapter. I really like the join a scene chapter, right?
Yeah.
So, like, this is where I get my first action item out of the book. And my first action item out of the book is, what scene makes sense for me? So I will freely tell you that, like, one of the reasons why, when Mike asked me to co-host Bookworm with him, I was like, yes, because, like, the scene around people who take in information and process it critically is a very valuable scene for me. It's one of the reasons why I like universities. It's one of the reasons why I like academia. I think you can go too far. I think it can get, you take yourself too serious in certain environments. But I like those scenes where people take in information and they think critically about them. Like, so that's a good scene for me. I also get jealous of things like, he mentions the Inklings and, like, different music scenes and the PayPal Mafia and there's everything. And I get jealous because I'm 40 something years old, and I don't have that scene, and I want it. Like, I want that scene, right? Like, so Mike, I'll freely admit to you, like, I get jealous of I don't know what you call it, your creator group, right?
Creator
Like,
Business Accelerator. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's like I want a group like that. But then I'll tell you, it's like, if you pushed me hard and you said, well, which one do you want? Like, what do you want? Like, create it, Cory. Like, go make that scene. And I would go, you know what I mean? Like, so it's a double-edged sword.
So I actually would generally advise not to go make the scene, but to join the scene, especially at the beginning, because you kind of don't know what the scene should look like, your ideal scene. He does bring up the Junto, which is Benjamin Franklin's club of 12 friends devoted to mutual improvement. But I feel like if you just grab 12 random friends and be like, hey guys, let's get together and mutually improve each other, the first version of that is terrible. The second version of that is a little bit better.
Yep.
Third version of that, okay, now we're on to something.
Yeah. And by then your 12 people has dwindled down to 6, right? At the most.
Yeah. Exactly. So you're better off just trying a bunch of different scenes, especially with the internet. I think it's more accessible than ever. To join that sort of thing. That being said, the Creator Business Accelerator, I mean, I've told you before that I would love to have you in there. And then I'm doing it currently as like a 10-week sprint for people. But I fully intend to make this just like a bi-weekly group coaching thing that's added on to the library in the long term. I feel like occasionally doing the sprints to kind of give people the positive peer pressure, the accountability to actually do the thing can be useful. But really the scene that he's talking about isn't like a cohort style where you show up for a short period of time and you do something. It's a place that you show up consistently because you join the conversation and then you walk away and then your brain continues to turn things over. And it's like, oh, well, here's a question I have. And then you come back and you ask that. And so that's where the really good stuff happens, I feel like, is the regular meeting of the minds, so to speak. So,
and this is an area where I believe the virtual medium has hurt us. Before the virtual medium had a possibility of existing, that scene had to be done in person, and we had to agree to meet somewhere, and we met somewhere, and then we established it. And I just think there's a stickiness to that I think that stickiness is harder to get virtually. Now, I'm not saying that the virtual hasn't brought other pros to it. I just think the virtualness is less sticky than it is, when you're in person and you're going to the local, coffee shop or brew house or whatever it is, like the stories he describes. So, okay, Mike, do you have any more from this first section? Because I'm ready to go to the second one if you are.
No, let's go to the second one.
Okay, second one. So part 2, the sirens. The perilous rocks you must beware. So as you can obviously tell, where he's getting this from is the idea that, the sirens would call you in, and then what would they want you to do? They'd want you to run aground onto the rocks. So when we're thinking about wisdom, what are these sirens that we must be aware of? I'll give you some of the things he talks about here. Empty the cup, right to think, assemble your board of directors, think for yourself, don't break your brain, grow up, don't be a snowflake, those kind of things. So this is a very interesting section to me, because in some of these chapters, he latches on to individuals and just, Mike, I texted you about this throughout the week. He kind of just goes off, right? He just goes off, and it's I'm like, did he just start ranting? And just go crazy on this rant about somebody that he sees doing this wrong?
So he does rant a lot. Now I'm curious, are you wanting to actually talk about the afterword as part of this, or are we just keeping it to the 3 sections?
No, we can talk about the afterword. Yeah, we can talk about the afterword.
Well,
yeah.
I will save it then.
Okay. Yeah, we'll save it for the afterword. But he does, he kind of goes off on a rant. Now, he ties it back into wisdom. So it's not that he just goes off on a rant and says, I'm going to use this as my platform to rant about a thing. He does tie it back into wisdom, and he makes connections, to the title of the chapter and back to it. So I just thought that was strange. That caught me off guard after the first chapter, where the stories were all kind of look at this thing and let's aspire to be like this. And then this one, it was all whew, here we go. He's gonna go off again. So
yeah, and let's say the quiet part out loud here. The person that he's talking about in this first chapter, The Storm Within Us, is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And again, we can talk more about this in the afterward, because I think that gives a lot of context. But at this point in the book, it's kind of you're being kind of brutal here, buddy.
Well, and my big thing is it's regardless of how I feel about the individual, I'm just thinking, holy cow, here we go. And he just, he goes for it. Okay. So what are some of the things that stood out to me in this? This is where you get the What's Your Information diet, which we've talked about before, and I think is very valuable. I really like the assemble your board of directors, and the idea of, if you have the wrong board of directors, they're going to lead you in the wrong way. If you have the wrong advisors, they're going to lead you in the wrong way. I like that he calls out the fact that we fill ourselves with, so this is empty the cup, but we fill ourselves with distracting information, and we kind of allow that to arise to an importance level that it shouldn't have, or it doesn't deserve, and we need to empty the cup. That's what he's talking about, is get rid of that distracting things. This ties into a chapter that he talked about in the last section, which is focus, focus, focus. So it's if you put those two together, they're a nice pair that we getting rid of the distracting things will allow us to focus more. I'll stop there on those. There's a lot of stuff in here that I think is really, really wise and well done, but those are a couple that I called out first.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Watch Your Information diet, because that was another one that I liked. So he frames this by saying that what we put in our minds is just as important as what we put in our bodies. Now, I don't know if you follow Ryan Holiday on social media or not. He's actually a pretty good Instagram follow. He's sharing little clips from the podcast that he records in his bookstore. The latest thing he's been doing, which I really love, is some famous person will walk in and he'll make personal recommendations. So there's a video of him walking around grabbing books off the shelves. This is why this one's really good, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But he also is a big time runner. So he'll post screenshots of, I just ran 20 miles at a 7-minute, 30-second pace. Yep. He's way faster than I am. So he's not quite to the level of Sahil Bloom in terms of Sahil is just such a specimen that it feels like every time he shares that stuff, he's kind of showing off a little bit.
Okay.
I don't get that vibe with Ryan Holiday at all, but he's another one of those guys who, he obviously takes care of his body, right? He's very, very much in shape. So watching your information diet for me hits a little bit different than somebody else who's sharing this who isn't a big time athlete, because you could look at somebody who's like in decent shape and they say, yeah, watch your information diet. What you put in your mind just as important as what you put in your body. And you're like, okay, yeah, I guess so. So you kind of believe it's important because I'm looking at your body and I can see you're not all in with that aspect, right? But when Ryan Holiday says it, it has more weight. It feels more extreme. It's like, okay, this is really important. You better pay attention to this. He says you can consume too much, applies to both food and facts. 100% agree.
Yep, I agree.
Which is the kind of inspiration behind the newsletter I mentioned. You know, at some point you got to quit consuming and you just got to create something out of it. But then also the kind of not necessarily action item for me associated with this, but the thing to think about is that a fool hears only what they want to hear. So consider your information sources. In fact, he explicitly says in this section to seek out the things that challenge you. That's sort of a theme throughout. There are a couple different places where he talks about finding people who disagree with you, people who have different points of view than you do. I think it was the last chapter, actually. He talked about how no matter where you go in the world, they think that their norms are normal.
Yep.
Right. And so you it's sort of a systemic way of pushing back against that, I think, which is pretty good advice.
Yeah. There's a section in here where he talks about thinking for yourself, and he uses Churchill as an example, and he uses some other examples or other people as examples that I didn't write down. But this idea that like tradition for the sake of tradition should be, like thought of as poor. Like we don't just do things because that's how everybody's done them. But at the same time, we don't just change things just because we want to change things for no reason. And I like this idea of coming out and analyzing a situation and not just doing what everybody else is doing for the sake of their doing it, but saying like, is this the best way to do that? And I think my engineer brain likes this because I'm very utilitarian. Like, Mike, if you tell me this is the way to do X, Y, Z, and I look at it and I go, Mike, no, it's not. There's a much better way to do this. And just because you and your 100 million other people are doing this, that doesn't mean that's the way I have to do it. So I like this idea of thinking for yourself. And essentially this chapter is kind of like overcoming groupthink. Don't just fall for groupthink because that's what the group thinks and that's what you want. And again, I said this before. I think the order in which he writes these chapters is very wise. Like, I think he does it in a good way where he flows you through it, not in a not in like a direct or an overbearing way, but in like a subtle way. So he'll talk about, what's your diet, and then he'll talk about think for yourself right afterwards. And then right after that, he's going to talk about another one that I like. It's called Don't Break Your Brain. So, okay, I just told you you're taking too much stuff in. I just told you don't fall for groupthink. Now I'm going to tell you, hey, every once in a while, just take a break. Like, take some time off. Like, don't just constantly be letting things into your mind. And what makes me make this valid, I think is the way I'll say it, is what makes this valid for me is I see this happen to people. Like, I see them not control their information diet. I see them not think for themselves. And then I see them just constantly watching, whatever it might be, like watching the news or watching, whatever it might be, that's really wrecking their brain. So I like the way he flows all of this together.
Which is a byproduct of the way that he writes his books, in my opinion.
I agree.
Because he's got to have note cards for each one of these chapters, and he's flipping through them all, and this one goes here, this one goes here. And the actually using the tangible objects to create the order is way different than organizing the folders in the file hierarchy on the screen.
Well, and I'll agree with you here, Mike. So I'll give you an attaboy. Scrivener is essentially the version of this. It's like the note card version of writing with his index card system, his physical index card system. But I'll tell you, I've used Scrivener before and I've played around with it, and it doesn't feel the same. Like, I've done the note card version where you have the physical thing, and I've done the digital version where you have Scrivener in the app, and you can move the note cards essentially the exact same way. And it doesn't feel the same. Like, it does not. It's more, tangible is the right word. There's another word there, but it's like it's more clarity producing to do it with the physical thing than it is to do it with the digital form.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
There was another thing in here I wanted to mention. Don't be a snowflake.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says, people have been banning and burning books they don't like for centuries. And then he says something very profound. He says, people are allowed to be stupid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Toughen
Yeah.
up.
And then he says, we have a choice between truth and repose. So we can basically either just like take the easy route, or we can try to get to truth and live right. But that's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then this is where he talks about how we have to seek out disagreement and exposure to those conflicting and challenging ideas. That's what makes us stronger.
Yeah.
So I think that's really powerful and something that everyone should seek to embrace, which is not the natural. Like you kind of mentioned the news sources. I don't care what side you're on. If you watch the news, it's not the journalistic presentation of facts that it used to be. It's very opinionated, and I'm sure it's all based off of the ratings, like the shows where they call the other side stupid and can you believe what this person has done now?
Exactly.
Get more people watch that. So that's kind of just what it gravitates towards. But that is having an effect on you, and it's not a good thing. So it may be human nature to just be drawn to that sort of stuff, but recognize the effect that it's having on you and push back against it. It's kind of a good way to summarize the book, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to lump 3 together again because I think he does such a good job. I guess this one I would lump 4 is he's got grow up and then don't be a snowflake, seek criticism and make mistakes. And Mike, if you wanted me to make a very strong claim for why it is worth it to go to a university, if you put those 4 together, if the university is good, if they're doing what they should do. Now, I'm not going to tell you that all universities are good and they're doing what they should do. They should help you grow up. They should help you not be a snowflake, right? And understand that there are these other ideas out there. And by no means, like, do you have to agree with all of them? Or are we trying to get you to agree with all of them? But you should be exposed to a lot of them, right? And you should think through those in an environment where the stakes are lower. And I would say the classroom environment is where the stakes are lower. You should seek criticism. That's essentially 95% of my job is to criticize people. Not in a mean way, but in like, you submitted a thing. Hey, this isn't good enough. Hey, you could have tweaked this. You could have changed that, right? You could have done this thing. And then make mistakes. And I'll go back to the idea of where do you want to make mistakes? You want to make mistakes in low stakes environments. The educational system is a low stake environment. What's the worst that happens? You fail my class and you take it over again. Oh my gosh, everything's going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like if I make a mistake in business, there's a real good chance that I have to fire people, or there's a real good chance that I don't have money to eat and I have to, do different things. So I like the way we tie it back to wisdom, right? Like these 4 ideas really lump together really well for if I can figure out a mechanism for these or a way to get better at these, I will become more wise. And I think that's really valuable for us.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Anything else on this one before we move to part 3?
I don't know. I guess the other one that I like is, well, there's a couple I like. Right to think right is one that I like for obvious reasons, because this is talking about how writing is a form of contemplation. He defines writing as thinking with your fingers. I think that's really cool. I had not heard this story, at least the details of this previously, but he talked about the Amazon executives who got so tired of pointless meetings that they banned PowerPoint and required a 6-page structured memo days before the meeting about the subject. I love that. I wish I could do that. Guarantee it's not gonna work, but that's pretty cool. And then Don't Fall for It is also kind of interesting, because this is really about why people get duped into joining cults or whatever. He says we drink the Kool-Aid because we want it to be true. Talks about how charisma is a powerful weapon, and no one wants to admit when they've been fooled. So I think he does a good job, though. I don't remember specifically from this chapter or not, but this isn't all just like hot takes, real pointed statements. He does a good job of tempering this with this could happen to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like when it happens to you, be willing to change your mind and make things right again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's not exactly how he said it, but that's kind of the takeaway as I think about what he says here.
Good. So for those of you listening, like this is a hard book to talk about in just in general, because there's a reason why these things have made it into this book. And I think they're valuable. Like, I don't think there's any section of this book that I would have just completely said, you didn't need to put this in there, or this is a waste of my time. Like, I really don't think there's anything like that. And I don't want to get the silent rating too far. But what it means is, like, Mike and I can't talk about all of them. So, like, we're glossing over like big chunks of this book, not because it's bad, just because we can't talk about all of them. So we're really trying to hit the highlights for you. So just keep that in mind as you're looking through. Like, why didn't you talk about this section? I read the book and I think this is the most important section. Yep, I agree that that's an important section. It's just we can't talk about everything. Okay, so let's go into part 3. Part 3 is called the apothesis, or touching the divine. Right. So the apothesis, or touching the divine, and in this one, I struggle with trying to understand exactly what Ryan was trying to get at in this last one. It's essentially like, I don't know, Mike, is this the wrong way to say it? Be wise? Like, is he basically like in part 3, like, hey, I told you how to try to get wise, and then I told you how to not make mistakes as you're trying to get wise, and now I'm telling you, just go be wise. Like, just go be a wise person, even though you'll never achieve wisdom, like pure wisdom. Go do the thing. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I don't know if you have a thought on that or not. But that's I had a trouble wrapping my head around part 3.
I think if you look at the like 2-page spread he's got for the different sections, as I look at this, it's really talking about discipline. Okay. So I feel like kind of inherent with that is practice. So yeah, I think you're on the right track when you're saying, okay, now go do it. It's like enough understanding. Now let's actually apply it.
Yeah, let's apply it. Yeah, maybe applied. Maybe that might be another one to say there. Okay, so our chapters in this one, or our sub-chapters in this one: shrewd, sensible, sound, strong, practice empathy, embrace the mystery, be self-aware, suffer into truth, laugh, and he's just got a lot of them. One of the things that we didn't really do all that well up until now in talking about this, the first part, the anchor individual, so Mike, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, the anchor individual is Montaigne. So he talks a lot about Michel de Montaigne, right? That's the first part, or part 1. Part 2 is, I would say, the anchor is Musk. And then in part 3, the anchor is Lincoln. So he'll have this one anchor person, and then he'll bring in other stories throughout that. But I think Lincoln is our anchor in part 3.
Probably, though Churchill shows up in a lot of them.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah.
In fact, I was reading the book last night, and there's a quote from Churchill on page 323 and 324 under the laugh section that I literally laughed out loud, and Toby's like, "What's so funny?" So I'll read this to you. This is really about self-deprecating humor, is what he's talking about at this point, being willing to laugh at yourself. So it says, asked for a blood sample, Churchill told his doctor, "You can use my finger or my ear, and of course, I have an almost infinite expanse of arse."
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So I cracked up, and Toby's like, "What's so funny?" I'm like, "Want to hear a really funny quote from Winston Churchill?"
Did he think it was funny?
He did.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So I think one of the ones that stands out to me is this embrace the mystery idea, that the more we learn, the more we don't realize we know anything. I wish that I had a prepared way to show you what we were taught in grad school about getting your doctorate and getting your PhD. And like, they drew this curve. So I'm going to try to draw a curve, like the outside of a circle. And then they drew a little bump on it, right? And then they drew a little dot on the bump, and they were like, okay, like here's the world's knowledge, and that's the big curve. And then the bump is the thing you decide to study, right, when you're in grad school. And then the little dot is what you're expected to do in order to get a doctorate. It's like you're expected to make that tiny little dot on the outside of that bump. And it just makes me think about this, and because the more you learn about an area, the more you realize you come out and you're just like, man, there's just so much I don't know about. Like there are 7 other people studying the exact same thing I'm studying from slightly different angles. Like you think about you with the PKM stuff. There's a bunch of people doing PKM stuff, and you're all able to survive in your own areas because you're all thinking about it a little bit differently, and you're experiencing the different aspects of it. And I mean, how much more does that get with biology or engineering or whatever it might be? So I really like this Embrace the Mystery chapter of essentially the wise person. There's a section here where he talks about the wise person steel mans the other person's position. So what do you try to do? You try to take the other person's position instead of knock it down. You try to say like, how is this the absolute right answer, and why am I wrong? And can I convince myself that your idea is the absolute right answer and that I'm wrong? And if you can do that, okay, you got better for it. And if you can't do that, you still got better for it, you know? And like, I really like the way you embrace it. He frames that Embrace the Mystery chapter.
Yeah, that kind of complements some of the other things that he mentioned in this book that stood out to me. And I can't find the specific place, which means he probably talked about it kind of all over the place. But when you think you know it all, that's really when you know nothing. So maybe it's kind of tying to this be humble idea, because mentions that fools are rarely humble, brilliant people often are, and experience should reduce your ego, not enlarge it. I think that is a really powerful phrase. So the more that you learn, the more you understand, the more wisdom you collect, the more you realize how much you don't know.
You don't know, yep.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like at the beginning, maybe when you don't have that context, that understanding, I've totally mastered this topic. And then you take the same amount of knowledge, you multiply it by 10. And once you have that understanding, you're like, yeah, I don't know that much.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Which I think is, I mean, obviously the ideal approach, but is something that I've tried to apply to my own life. So there are a couple chapters here, Always Stay a Student and Be a Teacher, that I really liked. Always stay a student. He mentions that you should continue to learn your entire life. We don't know what the future holds or what we'll be asked to learn, so we got to stay curious. I have a different way of saying this, which is keep going and keep growing. And to me, that means that you've never arrived. There's always more to understand, and it really doesn't matter how quickly you get something. It doesn't matter how much you actually collect in terms of notes, ideas, wisdom. The process is the thing that is important, and you should constantly be engaged with that. Kind of another way to say this, for me, one of my personal core values is permanent beta. Essentially, the application never gets shipped.
Yeah.
You never hit 1.0. You're always tweaking. You're always making improvements. And if you don't, that's when you should be concerned.
Yep.
There's a different idea here with Be a Teacher that I like, but anything else you want to talk about with the Always Stay a Student idea? I see you nodding your head. So
I just think we call it lifelong learning in my world, right? It's
Sure.
like the goal is always to be lifelong learning. And I think that can be why, as people get old and in their old age, like, I don't know if you've ever met these people. Like, you meet the person and you're just like, oh my gosh, they're 75, 80 years old, and they just are so alive, right? They're just so alive. And then you meet the other 75, 80, 85-year-old person, and you're just like, goodness gracious, like, how do they do it every day? Like, they're like so down, and they're just so, depressed, kind of a thing. And I don't know if this would be my only answer, but I think one of the reasons why is because I think a lot of those people that still feel alive are trying to learn. They're trying to do stuff. They're out there. They're learning. They're growing. They're taking that random art class at the local community college. They're, meeting with their friends to talk about whatever they're talking about. Like, and they're still trying to learn about the world. And I just think that is so huge. And I don't think it ever ends. And I think once we allow ourselves to get lazy and stop learning, I think all this other stuff starts to seep in. So now we let that information diet go to crud, and we let movies and entertainment to fill our life. But I think if we keep learning and we stay the focus of like, okay, I'm out of school, that's okay. I can still learn. Like, there's still a ton of stuff to learn. Like there's learning all over the place. So I really love that idea.
Yeah, and then so coupled with that is the idea of be a teacher, which, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense that it's linked. But one of the things that he mentions in the section of be a teacher is that we learn as we teach, which I think is absolutely true.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah, he mentions in here that wisdom cares about progress, not itself, and he admonishes us to teach everything that we know. And that is interesting to me. The timing of me coming across that statement is interesting to me. I have a t-shirt that says teach everything you know, because for a while previously ConvertKit had this merch store with some of their values, their sayings. One is create every day, default to generosity is another one, teach everything you know is another one. And one of the people that I respect a lot is Matt Ragland, and he shared a post this last week as we record this, basically saying teach everything you know is dead. And I was like, hard disagree, Matt.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he's got a little bit different point with it, because he's attacking it from, or approaching it from a newsletter marketing perspective. And basically his point is that if you give away everything that you know with the free stuff, no one's going to buy your product. You have to like get them interested, but you have to hold back some of the really good stuff. And I still disagree with that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if you're trying to sell a knowledge product as a historical artifact that you don't ever want to touch, that makes sense. Like, you never want to have to update it. It just, this is the thing that is insanely valuable, and I'm not going to give you access to it until you cross the paywall. The case can be made. However, the world is changing so fast, and new information is coming out all the time. I feel like if you take that approach, you've got approximately 12 minutes before people don't care, and they're just going to ask the LLM, and they're going to give them everything anyways.
Yeah.
So what people are wanting is not an information product. What they're wanting is connection. They're wanting coaching. They're wanting curation. They want to connect with a real human who's going to help them sort through all the noise and find the good stuff. And I don't think you can just do that by saying, oh yeah, just pay me money. Trust me, I got the goods. Like, it changes too fast.
Yeah, this might be a little bit different, but in light of this same be a teacher, physics, I never learned physics as well as when I had to teach physics. Like, 'cause I tried. Like, it was never that I didn't want to learn it. It was just, okay, now I'm in front of a bunch of people and I need to teach them physics. Man, I got to learn this subject. Like, I really got to learn it gets to another point that I'll jump into here. Grasp the essence. Man, there's a big difference between understanding the procedure or the surface level thing and then understanding the essence of a thing. And I didn't realize I was gonna reference Munger twice in this one, but you get into Munger's book and he would talk about the same thing, right? Like these scaffolded lattices and how they would come together. And this is where I think his commonplace books make so much sense, or linking, thoughts in a tool like Obsidian. This is where I think you're able to actually distill things down and get to the essence of the idea, and having that coordinated or not realized, but like have an artifact of that, something you can look at, something that's tangible, really helps you get to the essence of something. So I like the way he brings things together to make you think a little bit differently about him, or I should say to give you the opportunity to think a little bit differently about him. That's what I really like about this.
Yeah, that chapter on Grasp the Essence, this is Ryan Holiday in a nutshell. for me, because this is where he brings up the Gettysburg Address by Abraham Lincoln, obviously. Only 271 words, historically very short. And that example has been used so many times. What I didn't know was that Abraham Lincoln was not, like, that was kind of a surprise. He wasn't even supposed to have spoken there that day. There was another guy, Edward Everett, who had been speaking for 2 hours.
Yep.
And everybody's getting ready to go home. And then Lincoln pops up and he delivers the Gettysburg Address. And it's like, that's what people remember.
Yeah.
That's historical context that is fascinating to me that I had no idea was there. And Ryan Holiday just does an awesome job doing all the research and telling those stories. But what's to emphasize his point about grasping the essence, apparently Edward Everett talked to Abraham Lincoln afterwards, and he said, I hope that I could communicate as much quality words about the idea in 2 hours as you did in those 271 words or something like that. But like basically just saying, I used all these words, I took all this time, and I don't think I said as much as you said in your short little thing. Yeah. So yeah, that is the job, is to distill it down. And it's hard to do. It's why when I transfer my book notes to Obsidian, I force myself to write a 3-sentence summary. It's hard to summarize a book, especially a book like this.
Yeah, I know. Good luck. Good luck, Mike.
Yeah. But that is a valuable exercise. And it's not just the collection of information. Like, it's the human critical thinking process. He talks a little bit about AI and the LLMs and the afterwards. So we don't have to go there just yet. But this is the application of that, in my opinion. This is like a exhibit A for why you need to do that kind of stuff.
The only other one I want to talk about here, there's like 3 or 4 more that I could talk about. The only other one I really want to talk about is don't lose the wonder, because I think this happens to a lot of us. We stop that sense of just trying to find new things or being curious about things. And, there's a bunch of different philosophies on why that's the case. We beat it out of kids in school, or we've been told just play by the rules so many times, or, we're not trying to look for innovation here. We're just trying to get the job done, kind of a thing. So it's like, I agree with all that stuff, but I just really like this idea of how can we continue to be driven by this? Why does that work? Why does that do the thing it does? Why are we doing it that way? Like asking the question why. So this would tie to another concept that I've been exposed to a lot, and it's like the 5 whys. In any situation, you ask yourself why, and you have to get down to like level 5, and then really you start to get to the essence of a thing when you start to get to the 5th why, and you start to actually understand what's going on. So I just like this idea of this reminder, I should say, of keep wondering, keep being curious about a thing. And he ties it to wisdom. I'm not as worried about tying it to wisdom as I am just, I think it's a good approach to life, is keep asking those questions.
Yep. A couple other that I want to touch on real briefly. First, be happy. He talks about how for many people happiness is conditional, and then he talks about peace. And peace, like education, he says, is something you must give yourself. I completely agree with this. If you wait for the external circumstances to align, and then you'll be happy, you will never be happy.
Yep.
And then the other one, which I think is really important, maybe the most important chapter in this section, is the one on practicing empathy. Okay. Because there's a line in here which makes this something that is not just conditional for the people that I like or the people that I agree with. He says you can empathize without accepting or excusing. Mm-hmm. So what happens when we don't curate our information sources and we create this tribalism? By the way, there's a great Cal Newport Deep Life podcast episode where he talks a little bit about this. In terms of, what does he call it? The slope of terribleness, I think. I'll try to dig up the link for the show notes, but it just kind of pushes you more and more towards the extreme, and it dehumanizes the other side. And, well, those crazy people believe this. How can anybody believe that? I'm not even going to engage with them. And I feel like the practice empathy section here is like, no, they are humans who have their own issues and they're struggling with things. And you should maybe just chill out a little bit, dude, and try to understand where they're coming from. Just because you understand them doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Case in point, Ryan Holiday and Elon Musk. I'm really actually looking forward to talking about the afterword because there's some really important context in there, I think. But he obviously disagrees with certain people in this book vehemently.
Yep.
But I also feel like he practices what he preaches in terms of at least understanding where they're coming from. It is a little bit weird the way that he talks about some of this stuff is at the beginning. It's almost like that context should be there before you say some of this stuff. But getting into style and rating now, so I'll wrap it up there. But yes, empathy opens us up to everything and everyone is what he says in that section, and I think that is very important and missing in the world today.
Yep, I agree. He ends this part 3 with wisdom is virtue, virtue is wisdom. It's a chapter that I think is kind of like it's a pre-afterword. Like in my mind, like I actually think it belongs more in the pre-afterword than it does in the part 3. But like, you know, wisdom is about action. Wisdom precedes other virtues. It's the mother of all virtues. It doesn't just happen to you, but you get it. But once you get it, it stays with you. It takes work. Like he just does a good job, I think wrapping it up and kind of reminding you what his point was, why he wrote this book and why this book matters. Now we can get into the afterword. Okay. And in the afterword, he kind of gives a personal story about, you know, him dropping out of college and then, you know, kind of having a bad experience in his first working things, but he was successful and he learned a lot from watching other people. He talks about some of the reasons why he is so, he wrote so many words, I guess is the way I'll describe it. And he calls out Musk so many times in this, which Mike, I'll let you take that on. And then he talks about the fact that you're better off for writing a thing. Like I think he does a good job at kind of helping us understand a little bit more about him and a little bit more about what he did in this book. I wouldn't have said it until you just said it, Mike, but I completely agree with you. I wish he'd have done that at the beginning of the book. Like I really wish he'd have done it at the beginning of the book. I think it would have made the rest of the book make a lot more sense. But I didn't think about that. So that's a good thought. So what do you have on the afterword?
Yeah, I didn't jot down the specifics here. Oh wait, I think I found it in the afterword where he talks about Elon Musk. But basically what he says, trying to find it.
Let me buy you a little time. I just want to make sure I'll speak for me. I don't know if Mike wants to comment on this either. I really don't have like any strong feelings about Elon Musk. Like I really don't. Like so I'm not trying to be a defender of it. I think what we're trying to call out, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. What we're trying to call out is it seemed strange. Like it just seemed like very aggressively strange for someone to do that in a book with somebody who's still alive. I mean, like it was just weird. So go ahead, Mike.
For somebody who is not an active political figure. Now you could make the argument that Elon Musk is dipping his toes into politics and in places where maybe it doesn't belong. Yeah. But a large part of the original criticism of Elon Musk was really with the acquisition of Twitter or X.
Yes.
And he talks about Elon Musk's algorithm in part 2, which is basically break stuff, cut stuff. So you can kind of see his thought process when he moved in and he let a whole bunch of people go. That's what Elon Musk does. And as much as people who want to complain about, well, X is a husk of what Twitter was and how are they even keeping the lights on, it's actually, technically he's maintaining it pretty well, given, he basically cut a whole bunch of unnecessary labor to support this bloated thing and dialed it down to the essence. You may not like the methods, you may not like the public stories. That's Elon Musk, the personality. But in terms of the running the business, what he did was, you could argue, successful. However, I personally don't like what has happened to X or Twitter. It used to be my favorite social media platform. I'm not there anymore. And that's kind of sad, but I don't care. It's social media.
Yeah.
Like I really shouldn't be hanging out there anyways.
Yep.
But that whole narrative kind of feels like it's anchored in a bit of resentment or bitterness towards Elon Musk as a person.
Yeah.
And I found the section here in the afterword. He knows Elon Musk. Okay. So I knew this previously, but his bookshop, The Painted Porch, is actually in, I think it's Bastrop, Texas. That's where Tesla's headquartered. And he says on page 367, we have many mutual friends. I've been invited to his house. I'm a fan. It would have been much easier and safer to write about almost anyone else. I'm sure a significant portion of my readers will disagree with my take entirely.
Yep.
So that is important context that I kind of wish you had prior to telling the stories about the active person, right? And I'm sure if Elon has read this, he's not excited about what Ryan said, and he's
Agreed.
not being invited back anytime soon.
Agreed.
But also, you kind of have to tip your hat to Ryan Holiday for, I know this was difficult to write. I know you have this history with this person, but you did it anyways because you thought it was the right thing to do. Like, props to you for that. In context of the message of the book, when he says it, just because it is someone who is currently living, and it's not a historical anecdote like many of the other figures that he chooses to talk about, it does feel a little bit like a cheap shot in a sense. But then like the way he wraps this up, I kind of feel it redeems it a little bit. The whole afterword, I feel like that's maybe my favorite section of the book, to be honest.
Okay.
I feel like you get a whole bunch of context there that you didn't have before. This is where he brings up how he learned so much from Robert Greene and how he picked up that crazy note card idea from him. He shares a lot of the mistakes that he made as a younger person. I'm not sure if you've read any of his older books about the internet marketing stuff, but
I haven't read those, no.
I have them. I haven't read them yet, but everyone that I know who has read them is like, oh yeah, these are really good. And so when he says he could have been really successful in that world, I believe him.
Yep, me too.
So I don't know. I feel like switching from that to talk about stoic virtues feels like that was a risk. And I didn't view it like that before. It kind of, I don't know that I ever really thought about it, but just Ryan Holiday is the stoic guy, right? So just maybe in subconsciously you're like, well, it was easy for him to just talk about those things and he's making all this money off of this. No, he could have made way more money continuing to talk about internet marketing and he chose not to.
Yep.
Like that's kind of cool. And then the whole thing about, his history with Elon, the whole tone of the afterword is very self-deprecating maybe. Like he's sharing a lot of his flaws.
Yes.
I feel like it's possible you read all 4 of the Stoic Virtue series. You have no idea who Ryan Holiday is. And right before you get to the afterword of this one, you're like, wow, this guy, he's the next Socrates. He's the next Seneca, Marcus Aurelius 2.0. He's really got it all together. And then he's basically like, no, I am a worm. Not exactly what he says, but I actually really appreciated that perspective at the end. And I don't know how you interject that prior to the end, but it is kind of weird that it happens at the very back of the book, but I'm glad that it's there.
Yeah. I would say it a little bit differently than you said it in terms of it almost felt like hey, there's one more thing I got to tell you. Right? Like I just kind of taught you for a bunch of 100 pages. There's one more thing I got to tell you. And it's a little bit about my life and it's a little bit about, these other things. And it just, it adds a lot of context that I wish we'd have had prior to reading the book, but I'm glad we got it regardless. Like I'm glad we got it at the end. Blake in the chat said, it almost felt like he was just so disappointed in how Elon has changed. And I think Mike and I both agree with that. The reason I say Mike agreed is because he wrote agreed.
Yeah.
But like I that makes sense. Like that actually makes a lot of sense. It's like, here you are, you're doing these things, you're out there trying to put people on Mars, and you're building reusable rockets, and you're changing the auto industry and all that stuff. And then, blah, like, you let me down, kind of a thing. Like, I'm just so bummed at that. Okay, let's move on.
Sorry, one other thing I should call out with this. It's not just Elon that he picks on. He also talks about Trump.
Oh, yeah, he does pick on Trump, too. Yeah.
So, but what I appreciate about this is not, this guy is just such a moron, which is sort of the narrative whenever I hear anybody talk about him publicly. They're either MAGA or how can anybody possibly listen to a word that this guy has to say. What he does in this book is he talks about like the information diet, and he talks to Trump's aides, and he basically is raising red flags for not the person, but the process.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's letting you draw your own conclusions about the person, but he's basically saying, how people used to have to wrestle with the information, and they presented the brief, but for Trump, that's not good enough. It's got to be even more condensed. What he wants is something that's like this social media stuff where it's a quick hit. Oh, and by the way, that's really dangerous. And he's letting you kind of draw your own conclusions there, but he's not, if you're understanding the whole message of this book, there is something important about Ryan Holiday's commentary on this that is missing from everybody else who publicly disparages Trump as president, I think. And that is that he's not an evil person.
Yeah. No.
He is the product of the choices that he's made, but he would say that applies to all of us. And the tone of the end call to action to all of this is not watch out or you're going to end up like these losers.
Exactly.
It's just, we're trying to become wise. We're never going to get there. So let's all agree we're going to become a little bit wiser.
Yep. And here is a data point and a story to help you become wiser. I agree with you completely. Like I think you're absolutely right. Okay. Let's go to action items. I'll start. It's my book. So my only action item of this is what scene makes sense for me to join. That's really the only action item I have coming out of this book. I liked, the wisdom that was in this book. Like I liked what, Ryan Holiday talked about. I just didn't get a lot of tangible things that I could do coming out of this. So Mike, what are your action items?
I don't have any.
Okay.
I guess the argument could be made that I liked a lot of the writing and the distilling things down. So if there is like an action item for me from this, I think it is to more consistently codify my thoughts on things by writing more regularly. And that's not just writing words for the personal retreat book. That's really just like the opinion stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't have an action item, but kind of the thing I was thinking about as I wrapped this up was I have all these notes from all these books, and I'm trying to take those seeds and create new things out of them. But really it was just kind of an encouragement to work with the notes that I have in Obsidian more regularly and more effectively. And again, I'm not thinking that there's a problem there. I'm having trouble creating things. I've got the creativity flywheel going, stuff like that. But just how do I get a little bit more juice out of the orange?
Yep. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I already think you get a lot out of it. So good job. Good job for wanting to think more about that. So that's great. All right, let's go to style and rating. It's my book. I will start. Well, Mike, I had an interesting thing happen as we went through this book, or as we went through this conversation. So this book was a 3. And like I struggled to get it to a 3 for me. There are a bunch of reasons why it was a 3 for me. Prior to our conversation, again, I'll say prior to our conversation, is I don't know. I think some of the examples that he used, I didn't resonate with me. Some of his statements that were as aggressive as they were, I just disagreed with. Like there are parts in this book where in my notes, I'm like, I completely disagree. There weren't any chapters that I completely disagreed with, but they were like the sub points that he would make, I completely disagreed with. So there were a couple different things there, which in my mind, when I start to get that kind of stuff, And then you add the like kind of sour taste I had in my mouth at him attacking like I was just kind of like, man, I just didn't like this book. This just wasn't that great of a book. I have to admit that like I don't get a fascination with the Stoics. So you already don't have me. Like when you're coming there, do I think courage, discipline, justice, and wisdom are great? Absolutely. I think they're fantastic. Do I think that they, this idea of Stoicism is like, this panacea that we should all strive for? Not really. So long story short, I was at a 3. As you and I talked about this book, and I'm reviewing the chapters again, I'm reviewing my notes, and we're talking about this, there's a lot more valuable in here than I originally, like upon finishing the book, gave it credit for. So I really do have to bump it up to a 4. Like I have to bump this book up to a 4. There's a lot of good stuff in this book. There's just a couple things in here that are going to knock it down to a 4 for me. So my overall rating is a 4. Mike, where did you end up on this one?
Well, first, let me share some of the previous rankings for the other Ryan Holiday books. All right. So 201, Right Thing, Right Now. I believe we both rated that one a 5. Discipline is Destiny. This maybe was before you joined the show.
It was, yep.
Okay. So I get rated at 4.5. Joe rated it 5. Courage is Calling. This was 130, the first one. This was a double 5-star book. I was very nervous about this one, to be honest. Okay. I will be fully transparent. I was not looking forward to reading this one.
Okay.
I enjoyed it much more than I thought I did.
Okay,
I thought I would.
Okay.
As I shared, there were literally points where I was laughing out loud reading this. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen very often. True, it was in a chapter titled Laugh, but still, Ryan Holiday tends to be a very, I'll say heavy reader.
Oh, yeah.
Or writer. Like the ideas that he tackles, the things that he writes about just feel like they are really important. And sometimes that translates into you feel like reading the book is a bit of a slog, just not because the writing is bad or the stories aren't interesting. Just, I really got to wrap my head around this topic and I don't want to mess it up, sort of a thing.
It's a philosophy book, right? Like, so in my mind,
yes.
I equate that directly to being a philosophy book. I've never read a philosophy book that isn't like that.
Okay, sure. That is a good way to describe it. I didn't feel that way about this one. And maybe it was just the expectations going into it. Like, I'm probably not going to like this.
Yeah.
And then he sort of changed my mind as we went. Blake mentioned in the chat that he thought that this was his favorite of the 4 books. And I think it's my favorite as well.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean that I agree with everything that he said in here. So when you were saying that there were parts of this that you very much disagreed with, I think that's actually good writing. Good writing will make you either agree or disagree. That's the natural conclusion, but it should force you to decide for yourself, what are you going to do with this? Going all the way back to How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler, I feel like there are so many books where the message is watered down so that it's palatable and it's not going to tick anybody off in a broad range of disciplines. But the ones that are valuable are the ones where, no, all that stuff is garbage. This is what really matters. And then you can either agree or disagree with that.
Yep.
I think there's actually a lot more in this book that I agree with than I disagree with. And I do agree with you. I have zero interest in Stoicism.
Yep.
The more I study about it, the more I know about it. I'm like, nope, I'm good with my Christian value system. I remember we were talking to Donald J. Robertson for the Focus podcast. Remind me to grab this link and put it in the show notes. I don't know if it was the deep focus section or if it was part of that episode, but Donald J. Robertson was talking about how there are large sections of Stoic philosophy where it's like, we don't know what this person actually wrote or actually thought or actually said. So we're filling in the gaps when it comes to this stuff. And I remember taking a class in Bible college about all of the validation behind what was actually included in canonical scripture.
Yep.
And it's like, it's crazy the rigidness of the scrutiny that stuff was under before it could be included. And then like Stoicism and this philosophy, there's large questions as to what exactly they thought about this, but we think that, based on what other people have said. So it's like secondhand records passed down through generations. I guess we'll build a philosophy off of that. Like,
Yep.
It's bonkers to me.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I think there's actually probably a lot of overlap if you compare them side by side.
Oh,
Which is probably why I like these. Why I like these books so much. All that to say, I am going to rate this 5 stars. I did not think I was going to.
Okay.
I expected to rate it 3 or below. To be honest.
So do me a favor. Give me a recap. What are your ratings on Holidays books? Do you remember?
I think it was 5, 4.5, and then this one, which I'm going to rate as 5.
Wow. Holiday. I mean, man, he is up there on your high-ranking author list.
That being said, I'm done with the Stoic virtues. Can we talk about something else now?
So the funny thing is I get done reading this book and I think, should I go back and read Courage is Calling and Discipline is Destiny? And the answer is no. Like, I don't think I'm going to do that. Like, I think I would get something out of them, but I don't know if it's worth me going back and reading them at this point in my life. Maybe at some point in the future.
That is fair. So Blake called this out. He mentioned that, so probably one of my favorite of the 4 books, though, it made me want to read and write more instead of running through a wall like Courage.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what Courage did. It absolutely had that effect on me. So I don't know, like, maybe it's just the Stoic packaging that I am done with, because almost every single one of Ryan Holiday's books I have really liked. Victor in the library mentioned that he went and read The Obstacle is the Way, which I remember rating 5 stars back in the day. And he's like, I can't believe you rated this a 5-star book. And I don't even really remember it. It was like book number 2 that we did for Bookworm or something. I would have to go back and look at it again. But my thought on every single Ryan Holiday book that we've read, Stillness is the Key was another one. I think the only one I haven't read is Ego is the Enemy, which sounds like, actually in the afterword he talks about that one. I actually want to go back and read that one now, because it's sort of, how he got into the bad situation that he found himself in, sort of a warning tale. I guess just the packaging of the Stoic virtues is the thing that sort of rubs me the wrong way, but the content in terms of the books that he's written has been fantastic.
Yep.
I don't know where he goes from here. I know he's got like the Daily Stoic and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe this is where Ryan Holiday and I part ways.
Yeah.
But
I wondered that too,
know.
though. I was like, well, I wonder where he goes from here. Like, I wonder what's next for him. So, and he's probably just riding the train. He's probably not worried about the next one yet. Although I would be, if I was him, I'd be thinking about the next one. Because how can you not?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's the thing. The reason that Wisdom Takes Work, I feel like, is a 5-star book is, like Blake mentioned, it makes me want to write more. I feel like you can get to the end of this, feel like I have shared everything that I want to share about this. I don't know what's coming next, but if you are pursuing wisdom, you will figure it out, because the pen is not going to stop moving across the page.
Yeah.
So I'm actually kind of excited to see where this goes. But like I said, I do feel this is a potential fork in the road here where, Ryan Holiday and I part ways, which other people probably felt the same way when he decided he was done talking about internet marketing. It's like, oh, he's sharing such good stuff. He's going to talk about Stoic philosophy. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, Mike, it's time to do it. We got to put Wisdom Takes Work on the shelf. What is our next book, Mike?
Next book is now for something completely different.
Yeah.
Toxic Grit by Amanda Getz. Heard Amanda speak at Crafted Commerce. And as I shared last time, a little bit nervous about this one because it feels like, while I do agree 100% with the overall theme, maybe you shouldn't just push through and keep doing things that really shouldn't be done. But the description makes it sound like it is written towards women. And I think on one hand, that's good because that's a voice that's needed in this space. A little bit nervous to talk about it because who are you and I, non-women, to read and rate this book? But we'll give it the old college try.
And we'll learn a lot. I guarantee we'll learn a lot from it. So
Yeah.
That's good. All right. And then after that, I'm going to pick Sketch Your Mind by Zolt Vixen. And he is the maker of the Excalidraw plugin for Obsidian. So we're going to, Mike said it best when we were talking about this book before the show. It seems like the Bob Dotto's A System for Writing, only for like sketching. So that's a good way to put it, and I'm excited to see what it's all about. So Sketch Your Mind will be after that, after Toxic Grit. Mike, do you have any gap books between now and next time?
Not currently. We will see, but I still feel like I'm trying to get caught up after our trip to Tennessee.
Yep, I get that completely. Oh, Mike, I have a gap book that is very, 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 very long. Very, very, very long. It is a book about, it's a Bible book basically for that seminary thing I'm doing. And for the life of me right now, I can't remember the name of it. It's like The King and something, but it's basically like one of those ones that you read for seminary that's like that big, and it's, multiple hundreds of pages long. But I have to read the first 4 parts of it. So I wish I remembered the name of it right now, but I'm not gonna go find it. So that's my gap book. It's not really relevant. I'm gonna be reading it for the next month and a half, so it'll be fine. Everything's gonna be great with that one. So for those of you listening along, thanks so much. We are so glad you're here. For those who are pro members, thanks for being a pro member and helping support the show, helping support the buying of books and hosting and all of those things. If you're interested in becoming a pro member, this week we talked about being a independent creator and having to do creation versus being a non-independent creator and getting to do creation of things for the internet. So that was our conversation. Mike and I are both laughing, kind of smiling at the same time while we say that. But you can go back and hear that. There's a longer ad-free pro show. You get the bootleg. It's released right after the recording, which is typically about 1 or 2 weeks early. There's a wallpaper. It's $7 a month, and you can go to patreon.com/bookwormfm if you're interested in supporting the show. And thanks again to those who do.
All right, so I'm going to add one more perk to the Bookworm Pro membership.
Oh, this is news. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. This was the thing that at the beginning I was like, we'll talk about this later. But
okay.
I had this thought, and it just seems to fit here. So last summer I did a almost 3-hour reading masterclass. I'm going to add the replay to Patreon for Bookworm Pro subscribers.
Nice.
So I sold that masterclass for $50, but if you're supporting a podcast called Bookworm, that masterclass is perfect for you. So we'll add that to the perks as well. If you are reading along with us, pick up Toxic Grit by Amanda Getz, and we will talk to you in a couple of weeks.